Okay, so welcome to everyone after Pesach. Well, Baruch Hashem, I think we're all a little bit rested after the Chag. And we're continuing with Kohelet. We're actually going to be discussing a very important topic, one of the most important topics, I think, in Kohelet, and that is the topic of Mazal. Mazal means fate or destiny. This topic, however, requires somewhat of an introduction. So the discussion of the topic at length will be done next week, B'ezrat Hashem. We're holding in Perek Gimel, chapter 3 of Kohelet. We've covered a little bit of what Kohelet, Shlomo Melech, begins to describe as many things that are confusing to him. And if it's confusing to him, you can imagine how much more confusing to the average human being. Confusion about life in itself, what this world is all about. I believe the Chafetz Chaim said once that if man would be allowed to live for many, many years, if he would be able to live through many generations, you would actually begin to understand a little bit more what's going on in this world. But we are tourists. We come for a short visit, and it's partially has to do with the short visit that we don't fully understand everything that's going on, especially that we are caught up in the experience called life, and we're not looking at it as observers from the outside. Kohelet had the advantage to stop and think and analyze as an observer and share with us what he found, what his conclusions are. But most people don't stop to think and don't realize what is really going on. They maybe have questions, they don't even search for answers. And that is the fourth son in the Haggadah Shel Pesach that we read about. She'eno yodea lishol, he does not even know how to ask. Ask somebody from the street, what are you doing in this world? What is life all about? He's going to be shocked by the question. He for sure does not have an explanation. So people do not think enough. But part of the problem is that we don't have that much time to think. And life is complex. The creation is somewhat complex. And because of the complexity, it makes it even more difficult to understand Hashem's ways in this world. In Perek Gimel, in chapter 3, Shlomo Melech begins to explain a little bit of the questions that we may have, the questions that he had, and he begins to remove a little bit the haze, right, that is covering a lot of life, that somehow blurs our vision from seeing or from understanding what is going on. So he begins to lift the veil. He begins to reveal to us a little bit what is going on. And in doing so, he will answer one of his questions that he repeats more or less several times. Ma yitron la'adam b'chol amalo. What does man gain in all his hard work? What is he after? What is the purpose of everything? So that's a very important question. And in order to answer this question, he's going to tell us, L'kol zman ve'et l'chol chefetz tachat hashamayim. He's going to begin chapter 3 with a very enigmatic statement. Enigmatic means it's not so clear, it's a little bit puzzling, but it's very, very powerful statement. And it tells us that everything has a time. L'kol zman ve'et, in a period. L'chol chefetz tachat hashamayim, for all events in this world. In other words, there's a time. A time means that there is a reason, there is an order for everything in this world. There's something behind everything that happens in this world, regardless of what it is. Things don't just happen by itself. So the simple interpretation, and he's going to give us a list of all kinds of events, some of them that we understand and some of them that are perhaps not so evident to us. The simple understanding of this pasuk is that the occurrences, the various occurrences in life, whether it's birth or death, whether it's war or peace, they all have a time. And by telling us that they all have a time, he's already giving us a little bit of a clue that many, many things are predestined. They already have a time. That means there is a time that has been set for them beforehand. And these things will occur, whether we want them or not. Everything has a certain time for it to occur in this world. And therefore, it has a reason. Another interesting pirush that many perhaps would never come across unless you study Pirush Yonatan ben Uziel, the Aramaic translation, and somewhat of a commentary as well on Kohelet. Yonatan ben Uziel is not just like Onklos. When you read the Torah, when you learn the Chumash, you may come across Onklos. Targum Onklos is the translation of the Torah into Aramaic, the language of the masses, the language that was spoken back then in Eretz Israel and in Bavel, in Babylonia. So that was an important translation to give us a little bit of an understanding of what's going on in the Chumash. And he sometimes sheds a little bit light. He adds a little bit of a commentary, but it's not a real long commentary. It's more a translation. Yonatan ben Uziel, who was a tremendous saint, tremendous tzaddik, was tremendous Ruach HaKodesh, not just regular Ruach, tremendous, like a prophet. He actually expounds many, many times, not once in a while, many times, on the various Pesukim in the Torah and in the Nevi'im, the majority of them, as to what is really going on, or what's the deeper meaning. And Min HaShamayim, they did not allow him to make a translation of Daniel. Daniel, talks about Mashiach, but not just talks about Mashiach. So does Yeshayahu, so do many prophets talk about Mashiach. But Daniel gives ideas of the timing of when it's going to happen. Even though we don't know the exact time, but he gives certain references of time that are potential dates, especially if we're talking about the last possible dates. Because the earlier date, the Mashiach can come anytime, no one knows. But the last possible dates, some were privy to that information. So Daniel was not, Yonatan ben Uziel was not allowed Mishamayim to write a commentary on that because Mishamayim, they were afraid he would reveal too much. That's who Yonatan ben Uziel was. The Gemara says when he learned Torah in such sanctity, any bird flying over him would burn. This is who he was. By the way, for those of you who are still single, there's a segula to go to his grave and pray in his grave. And if it's meant to be that the one should find his soulmate very quickly, by being in his grave, by praying there, that will make things come to be much easier. It doesn't guarantee, because it all depends when Hashem wants this to happen, for one to get married. But if there's any difficulties, any obstacles, any issues that may be preventing the zivug, so we have a tradition that praying at his grave is a segula. In other words, it could help one speed up things. So many people go there, and many people have become engaged right after that. Some not, but some yes, depending on when Hashem, of course, ultimately wants. Anyway, so Yonatan ben Uziel is a tremendous help in understanding a deeper meaning of the pasuk. So what's his take, or what's his interpretation on this pasuk, Lakol Zman Ve'et V'chol Chefetz Achat HaShamayim, that on every human being and individual in this world, there will come a time when he will experience all that there is to experience. In other words, if we're here many times, as I will explain later on about reincarnation, it is very quite possible that one will go through poverty, through wealth, having children, not having children, long life, short life. All the various occurrences, all the various kinds of life experiences that can potentially be, everyone experiences them at some point. So this is interesting. He's telling us that not only do these events occur, not only are they for a reason, everyone gets to feel them. Some more, some less, but everyone gets to go through them at some time. But before we go on, he makes mention of Zman, time. What is this time? And time is something that even scientists are already acknowledging that it is something that is only exists over here in this world, not in space. It is something relative to us. Time, the Kabbalah describes as a creation too. Time has been created. In other words, outside of this physical world, there is no real time. Time is necessary for us. Time is something that is created. So when he says Lakol Zman Ve'ed, he's saying that everything in this physical world has this thing called time. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of course, is Me'al Hazman. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is above time. He doesn't need time. He doesn't work with time. But in order for us to understand certain things, in order for us to live through our life, we somehow have to relate to this thing called time. So the fact that he makes mention of this is something that we need to keep in mind, that this time has a form and shape. It's a real creation. It has a purpose. Zman is really a bubble, something that has been created, and this Zman, Nikva Merosh, has been established from beforehand. In other words, it's like Hashem creating something and later on putting putting humanity, the human race, into this bubble. I think one of the best ways to describe this Zman, this creation of time, is as a bubble, as a real creation that has a form and shape that varies in size, and what takes place in this Zman also varies, just like the weather. We have 4 seasons. The world looks different. The trees look different. The temperature is different. And it's all because of the time. A certain time that things appear to be different. I mean, for the most part, we still have the heavens, the sky, the sun, the moon. But how much sun do we have? How much light? That varies. So in the same way that these physical changes occur, so do all kinds of occurrences and events occur as a result of a change in the time. So one way to look at this is time is a creation. It's something that has been established before. It is something that is part of this world. So when we live through times, we're living in a bubble called time without the ability to really change the bubble. There are certain things that we can change, there are certain things that we can do, but we cannot change the form, change the time that is already pre-established and has its form and has its purpose of what it needs to do. I've mentioned this before, but perhaps it's worth repeating. For those of you who remember, we spoke a little bit about why did Hashem make everything round? In the world, look at the planets. Do you know of any square planets? What's so unique about round? Everything is round, whether it's Mercury or Pluto. Right? The galaxies, even though they have various shapes, but you see circular patterns in them, at least at the center. Everything is circular. Our eyes are circular. What does round have to do with anything? What's so special about the shape that we call round? Anybody want to suggest? Yes.
If a planet were square,
right,
it could not survive because its gravity would be too strange and it could not tilt right. It could not turn on its axis right.
Yeah, well, I'm sure God would figure out how it could turn on its axis even if it were square. Even
Right.
though you are right that because of its shape, it has a certain ease, perhaps, in rotating on its axis, but that's not necessarily the real reason of why it was created that way. There's something else, maybe.
This is like where you start, you are finished, and you start again.
Yeah, okay. Now you're getting closer, yes.
Yeah, that's why she said cyclical, because it's cyclical. It goes around.
So what is cyclical? What does cyclical mean?
There's no end point. There's no end point.
Okay, it means two things. There's no end point, which is a Kabbalistic concept called Ein Sof. Kadosh Baruch Hu in the Kabbalah is known as Ein Sof, infinite, infinity. Here we're talking, in this world, in the physical world, we're talking about limits. We have square, we have a line from here, a point, a dot, right? We have defined limits. We have physical limitations. The physical world is limited. But if we go out a little bit out of this physical world and we look at the earth, we see a globe, we see a circle. And this circle has a little bit to do with reminding us that the one who created all of this is Ein Sof, without an end, without a shape or form, really, something without limitations. But it goes beyond that. The cyclical concept that you mentioned also has to do with what he's talking about right now, what he's going to begin to explain to us, that there are cycles in this bubble called time. What used to be 100 years ago comes back. We're going to see the term. Actually, we already were discussing this in the past. Dor olech v'dor ba. Generation comes, generation goes. Many, many people who are here today have been here already before, which we're going to explain soon what that means. So there's a certain cyclical pattern to life, to people, to how we live our life. History repeats itself. Remember that? What's history repeats itself for? You mean to say the same mistakes were made? Not necessarily. Yes, mistakes people make, they repeat the mistakes. But the actual pattern of history repeating itself is not just human beings making mistakes. It's actually this bubble, this cycle, this existence in time 500 years ago that for some reason is coming back again. And we don't always understand. Months of the year. Don't we have Nisan come every year? Don't we have Wednesday nights coming every week? That's because we call them that. Are they really the same? Is last Wednesday the same as this Wednesday? Not really. What were you doing last Wednesday? Right? not what you're doing. Yeah, not what you're doing now. You see, but it existed, but it was a different time frame. So even though it's coming back, it's only coming back because we call it Wednesday. Is it exactly the same? No, it's not the same. But there are certain times, manim ve'itim, that he tells us are exactly the same. The names may have changed, the people may look different, but somehow the world comes back to a similar point in time that existed in the past, and similar events occur. Comets. You know about comets? You know that there's certain comets that people, most of you I'm sure are aware of, that they come back every certain amount of years. Halley's Comet, have you heard of that?
Mm-hmm.
Halley's Comet, Kochav Shavit. Right? They come back every number of years, some every 70 years, and astronomers were able to figure it out. The Chachamim in the past knew about this too. Wow, it's interesting. You can actually predict certain things. You can predict certain weather patterns as well. By seeing certain things in advance occurring, you are able to see, okay, if this is here and this is there, this is what we should anticipate. This is what may happen. Right? But of course, the weather people are not always right because things go wrong at the end. But at least they're able to see certain things in advance because there are certain rules in creation. And that's a very important key to remember that will help us understand mazal. Rules. Just remember the word rules. This world is governed by rules. Perhaps another explanation that I thought about in explaining why the world is round is for those of you who have a little bit exposure to Kabbalah, you may recall the concept Sefirot. The word in English, sphere, comes from the Hebrew word Sefirot. Same thing, sphere, Sefirot. What is a Sefirah? The best English translation for Sefirah is emanations. Emanations of God. What is an emanation? Right. The Sefirot are Hashem's involvement with our world. How He interacts with this world. That's the best way to describe it, is how HaKadosh Baruch Hu interacts with this world through Sefirot. Various kinds of Sefirot. 10 Sefirot. We have 10 fingers. It's not an accident. It was designed. Not 8, not 9. Well, for sure not 9 because things have to be even, right? They have to be equal. Right? They don't have to be, but they appear to be. 2 eyes, right? 2 ears. Things appear to be balanced. Not a coincidence either. Why did Hashem create us just with 2 ears and not 3? People don't think about it. You know, they're just happy. Baruch Hashem, I can hear. Baruch Hashem, I can see. Baruch Hashem, I can breathe. They don't think about the numbers. Why 2? Thank God we only have 1 mouth. Could you imagine what would happen if some people had 2 mouths? Yeah, the mouth is, we would have to have 2 cell phones. It would be terrible. Yeah. Anyway, there's a reason for that, but that's Kabbalah. We're not learning that right now. Why? What's the reason behind 2? What's the reason behind an even number? Even that has meaning in the Kabbalah. The difference between odd and even is significant in the Kabbalah. The Gemara even mentions that if you don't want any trouble with demons, buy an odd number of vegetables. Don't buy an even number of tomatoes. I'm giving you a quick example, and don't ask me why right now. There is something to do with odd and even. Okay, just to remember that. But you don't have to worry too much about that. There is something about numbers. What do the numbers represent? Why are there 3 avot, Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov? But we have 4 imahot, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah. Right? Did you think about that? Yeah. All of these numbers. In the Haggadah Shel Pesach, you go through it a little bit. We have 6 sdarim of Mishnayot. Right? We have Shmone Yarchei Leida, Tish'a Yarchei Leida, 9 months that a woman is pregnant. Why 9? You know, some animal give birth in less than 9 months. Why 9? What's unique about 9? Right, so all of these numbers have significance. So getting back to what we were saying, getting back to the Sefirot, the spheres, HaKadosh Baruch Hu interacts with this world through something called spheres. These spheres, of course, have no true shape and form, because nothing in the outside world, in the spiritual world, has shape and form. Only the physical world has shape and form. But nevertheless, in order for us to understand in our limited mind how these spheres interact with us, there are various ways that the Kabbalah describes them. One way is through circles. There's another way. But one way is through circles. And how are these circles formed? Through a process called tzimtzum. Tzimtzum means to constrict. God is so incredible, so incredible that we don't even have any idea of what He's like and what He is. But it's something beyond us. In order for Him to relate to us, in order for Him to create this physical world that is limited, and He's not limited, He had to constrict His greatness. He had to constrict that immense light, as it is called in the Kabbalah. The Or Ein Sof. Tremendous light. Now, it's not fluorescent light, it's not incandescent light. But in order for us, in our physical limited minds, in order for us to understand a little bit, it is described like that. But you have to be careful, if you learn a little bit of this Kabbalah, is not to attribute real physical terms, because it's not physical at all. It's just for us to understand a little bit of this energy, this light, this incredible shefa, abundance that's coming down from above, constricts itself to create a physical world, because He's not limited. So in order to create a physical, limited world, there's a constriction process. And through this constriction, spheres or circles are formed as it's coming down. As this light is coming down, it's constricting itself more and more and more in circular patterns. Through Chesed, Geburah, right? The various Sefirot, up until the bottom, which is Malchut, which represents this world. Anyway, this is a very deep topic, but I just brought this out because perhaps spheres or circular patterns have something to do with why certain shapes are round. Maybe, the way that Tzimtzum works in creating that which is physical. And the round, of course, has no corners. So it shows a little bit that no limits or no boundaries per se that the real physical world does have inside. But outside, there's no real boundaries. Everything is limitless. So in a way, you are seeing the imprint, that's how I call it, the imprint of a Kadosh Baruch Hu in the physical world through a non-physical or non-limited pattern that is round, as opposed to being square. Okay, that's as far as that is concerned. Okay, now that we have a little bit of the introduction cleared, what we're going to be discussing now is something that I've never done before. And that is, I'm going to give you, in a nutshell, the next half an hour or so, as long as it takes us, the 15 most fundamental concepts that we need to know in order to understand next week's topic called Mazal. Okay, so next week, remember, is a big topic, a very fascinating topic. that we will hopefully attempt to understand what is this mazal all about, how it functions, how it operates. But before that, I want to remind you that there are many concepts that are just as important as mazal, and anyone who has a full understanding of all the 15, B'ezrat Hashem, will have a very good understanding of many, many things in life. Now, these 15 really deserve a lecture or more for each one of them, because they're big topics. And I've done some of them. For some of you who have been here, we've been doing this for 18 years, this shiur on Wednesday. I have discussed just about almost every one of them, even more than once. So it may not be completely brand new to you, but for those of you who have not been here, you're lucky in a way, because these are, I consider, the most important concepts in understanding creation, in understanding how Hashem interacts with this world, some of the main concepts that Judaism elaborates on that can give us a better understanding of life, a better understanding of mazal, and so forth. So that's what we're going to be doing next. So let's begin with the first concept. First concept is called Ashgaha Pratit. Anybody here about Ashgaha Pratit? Ashgaha Pratit, loosely translated, means divine providence. Divine providence reminds us as Jews that this God, who we believe in, is involved in what happens in this world. He created this world. Avalo azavta shetach. He did not abandon the world. He's still here. He's involved. We can relate to Him. We can pray to Him. He listens to us. This concept is very Jewish in nature. Non-Jewish religions and civilizations had a very hard time believing this. Some of them perhaps understood it a little bit, maybe subscribed to it, but most of them did not. Not at least as much as we do. We actually believe that He's involved in everything. Ashgaha Pratit, if you want to know what it means that if you were walking down the street and a little rock, a pebble, was here instead of there, that's also B'ashgaha Pratit. A little pebble. What's this little pebble doing here where it should be there? Well, of course, the wind blew it. Or the gardener shoved it. Or whatever, somebody moved it. It's there for a reason. That is a very revolutionary concept that even religious Jews are not always very clear about. Chassidut, if you ever heard about Chassidut, Chassidut talks about this at length. That everything, even a little pebble, where it is B'ashgaha Pratit. It's there for a reason. Now, you may say, well, is there as much Ashgaha Pratit over a pebble as over other things? That I would accept, that certain things have more, and certain things maybe have less. But Ashgaha Pratit really means nothing happens in this world without His permission. That's very, very important to remember. If you understand this very, very clearly, it helps us with many other topics. It will help us with the topic of pain and suffering, which I'll briefly discuss. Right? Bitachon in Hashem. Nothing happens without His permission. Nobody can do anything in this world without Hashem allowing it to happen. It has nothing to do with free will. He has to agree. He's the boss. He created, He's in charge, He's managing it, He's aware of everything. You lock yourself up in the closet, He doesn't need an x-ray. Right? He sees through everything. He knows our thoughts, everything. All of that is part of the concept called Ashgaha Pratit, divine providence, but it's more than divine providence. According to Jewish tradition, that divine providence is somewhat unique or extra sharp focus on the Jewish nation and on Israel as a land. Ashgaha Pratit, private, custom made. Ashgaha Klalit over the world. Ashgaha Pratit, individual attention, unique relationship with the Jewish people, with Eretz Israel. Why? Because the Torah says so. Once we made an agreement, made a contract with Hashem, we chose Him, we chose to live our life according to a certain direction, He says, you know what? I'm yours, you're mine. It's a marriage. It's a relationship, a very close relationship, which therefore has Hashgaha Pratit. Beautiful, so special. You can talk to Him right now, He's listening. any language, by the way, even Chinese, anything. He understands all the languages. He even understands the language of the heart. He knows our thoughts, right? This is very, very special. Very, very special, but not everybody believes it or understands it. But very, very important. If one does not have this straightened out in his mind, we can't advance in understanding everything else, like mazal. So we have to understand what this is all about. So this is a very, very powerful concept in Judaism. Next, mazal, even though that's something that we're going to be talking about next week, what does mazal really mean? Mazal I call the machine. It's a machine that connects the upper world to the lower world. Mechona. It's a certain kind of machine that works by certain rules. You don't have to think of it as a machine. You can think of it as a piano also. Why a piano? You know how a piano works? If you ever have a chance, pick it up and see all the chords. You know, you press one goes up, one goes down, right? It's an incredible machine that produces various tunes, depending on which one you press, right? So mazal, if you think about it, there are many, many strings connected from the upper world to the lower world. Mazal means something that comes from above and comes down. Unozel, as we say in Hebrew. It's like it's dripping down. Something that's coming from above to the lower world. And how does it come down? Through some invisible connections, from cords that we don't see.
So
Jupiter, for example. Jupiter is part of our mazal. Tzedek, as it's called in Hebrew. Over 700 million miles away. You know that? Millions of miles away. And you telling me that it has something to do with this earth? Yes. What do you think Hashem made it for? So we can look at that red spot with the telescope? Who needs Jupiter for? What does Hashem need Jupiter for? The earth is fine. This is only where life exists. There's no life in all these other planets. So what does he need the stars and galaxies
מה
for?
ההבדל בין זה לבין השגחה פרטית?
מה זה?
מה ההבדל? What is the difference between this to השגחה פרטית?
No, we're talking about another concept right now. אני עובר למזל עכשיו.
אבל מזל זה
Okay, yeah, so come next week, Bezat Hashem. Yeah? Sure, good question. What's the difference? The next week. So, I'm right now only going through definitions. The definition of mazal are the chords, the strings, invisible. We cannot see them, but they exist, just like cordless. Today we can understand a little bit what cordless technology is. Wireless, right? You see electricity? No, but it exists. So there's a lot of things we don't see, but they exist. And these are connectors. A machine that somehow functions by transferring something from the upper worlds into the lower world. And it works by certain rules. It plays certain tunes depending on which buttons are pushed. And of course, he pushes the buttons. But it's not so simple. When does he push this button? When does he push that button? For that, you have to come next week. Yes?
Couldn't Hashem have created Jupiter, though, for the purpose of stopping us from getting battered by meteors? Because when meteors come into the system, Jupiter has very strong gravity, and they hit Jupiter instead of us.
That's a good question. Jupiter may have been created for several purposes, but that's not the main purpose, to stop meteors. What does Hashem need meteors then for? Don't create the meteors to begin with. You see what I mean? Yeah. But you're correct. There are sometimes multiple reasons for something. Next concept. Hishtadlut. Actually, before we go to Hishtadlut, Marechet HaMishpat. Marechet HaMishpat is a system of justice. In creating this world, there is din and there's rachamim. There's the justice and there is compassion. That is to remind us that there's a certain exactitude. Certain things are exact, and certain things have leeway. Hashem allows for certain leeway. Hashem allows for change. In the same way that He created things in an exact way which He would prefer them to be, obviously because of His compassion, because of His love for us and understanding human frailty or fragility, right? People are weak. He allows for a certain change, leeway, adjustments. So that's called rachamim. So in this world, depending on people's behavior, there is room for din and there's room for rachamim, which is flexible. Flexibility in Hashem's system of how he manages his affairs with human beings. The next concept is Bechira Chofshit, a very important concept called free will. Free will is the ability of the human being to exercise a certain degree of liberty, where he's not tied completely to his mazal, which is more rigid, right? Where he can actually become a partner in creation. As the rabbis tell us, man can become a partner, an active partner in creation. But this free will enables him to do good or bad. What is good? Good is the will of God. Bad is that which goes opposed or against the divine plan. We don't have the time to get into that. It's a big topic in itself, Tov Ra. But briefly, Tov means to do that which is God's will, that which brings us to the ultimate purpose of life. Bad, or Ra, is that which goes against Hashem's plan. What enables Tov and Ra? Bechira Chofshit, free will. Versus what? Versus instincts. Animals do not have Tov and Ra, they have instincts. And instincts are for what? Instincts are just for survival. Not to be necessarily active partners. Even though they contribute in their way, they're not active partners like the human being can be in creation. Then we have Ishtadlut, as the Pasuk says, Beze'at apecha tochal lechem. In the very beginning of Bereshit, Hashem tells us that part of life, unfortunately, involves working for a living, sweating, working hard sometimes. That's the simple meaning of the word Ishtadlut, working, making an effort. What is really Ishtadlut for? Ishtadlut is the means through where a human being can actually advance or become better than the average. In other words, according to one's mazal, as we will explain, there are certain limitations. The free will, through the proper hishtadlut, allows man to overcome certain difficulties, to be better. In other words, because of his choices, man has the ability to litkadem, we say it in Hebrew, to advance in life in certain areas. Not in all areas, but in certain areas through his hishtadlut. Whether there was more or less, one can do more tzedakah, one can do less tzedakah. They both have the exact amount of money. Same amount of money, but the ishtadlut, in this example of tzedakah, would be one does more, one does less. Nothing to do with mazal. It's more related to bechira chofshit, to free will. Nonetheless, it is a parameter that varies from individual to individual. How much ishtadlut do people put into their work? You can have an employee who's lazy. Oh, my boss is not here, let me take a coffee break. Right? Or one who's diligent, one who wants to get the job done regardless. His ishtadlut is greater. Yes?
בחירה חופשית זה לא רק במצוות?
זה בעיקר בתחום הטוב והרע. לא רק מצוות. בטוב ורע. בחירת free will is in the area of good and bad. Not necessarily mitzvot. It's in behavior, how you relate to your spouse, to your friend, to your neighbor. How you relate, your attitude is bechira chofshit. There's no mitzvah what kind of an attitude you should have.
No, but
That's bechira chofshit too. Yeah, but attitude, gisha, yachas. Right?
אז יש לך גישה חיובית.
No, זה משהו אחר. וההפתעה could be through maasim, through actual deeds. Or it could be through an attitude. You like some...
בגלל שאומרים הכל בראיית שמיים חוץ.
כן, על זה אנחנו נדבר, בעזרת השם. Next week we'll talk about that. Next concept, emunah. What's emunah? They call it faith, but emunah really means the knowledge that God exists, plus what He expects of us. It's not enough that we know that He exists. What does He expect of us? I believe in a God. Do you know what He wants from you? Emunah really means that too. I know Him. I know more or less what He wants or what He expects of me. Bitachon, however, which is related to emunah, means that I have a connection with Him. I trust Him. I not only know Him, I not only know He exists, I actually trust Him, rely on Him, and completely have, in other words, no problem in accepting whatever He gives me, the various levels of bitachon. I guess we can call it reliance. trusting in God, not just believing in Him that He exists. It's a much higher level, and it's a very, very important level to acquire. That takes a tremendous amount of work.
Bitachon is part of this emunah?
They go together, emunah and bitachon, but bitachon is the higher form of emunah, and it is the complete form of emunah. Then we have the concept called sachar va'onesh, reward and punishment. What is that? That's a system that is intended for us to eliminate any thought sha'olam hefker. It's the opposite of hashgacha pratit. In other words, it's not the exact opposite, it goes with it, but in order for us not to ever think for a moment that sha'olam hefker, one may think the world is just a hefker. Hefker means anybody can do anything they want. Look at all these evil people, apparently they're getting away with whatever they're doing. Ha'olam lo hefker. There is sachar va'onesh, and sachar va'onesh is built into the system that for every good deed you are rewarded, for every bad deed you are punished. And sachar va'onesh is necessary because man is supposed to be reminded at all times that he has responsibilities. He's accountable for his actions. So sachar va'onesh is a concept that strengthens or is supposed to remind us of our continuous responsibilities. We're supposed to have a continuous awareness that actions are important. Words are not cheap. Words are actually powerful things that can do harm too, right? We sometimes need to be reminded about that. We don't think that they have consequences, but you can destroy a person's reputation through saying a bad word. So sachar va'onesh is a system that is in place. We can call it an additional ma'arechet, an additional system that is intended to do away with any thought that the world's just running by itself without end, without purpose, and everything is haphazard, everything is rampant. In other words, without any direction. And that's not true. There is direction, there is order, it is being managed, there's hashgacha pratit, and so these are all related, but hashgacha pratit is not sufficient, it's not enough by itself. Sachar va'onesh means that ultimately our actions are important and we're accountable for it. There will be repercussions, there will be consequences. We may not see it immediately. But we don't have the time to get into this topic. We've already done that. We've covered this in the past. That sachar has, of course, something to do with olam haba, not always in olam hazeh, the world to come. It is something that we don't always see immediately, but we're supposed to believe. So here's a great example that if you have emunah, and you understand bitachon, right, and you understand hashgacha pratit, these three will already help you deal with something called sachar va'onesh. How come this man is so good and so righteous? How come he's suffering so much? This man is so evil and so bad. How come he's a millionaire? These are the kinds of questions that people have. You need a strong emunah. You need bitachon. You need to understand hashgacha pratit. You need to understand a little bit mazal. All of this helps. The more we understand these concepts, the more we can deal with something like sachar va'onesh. But here we're not dealing with the details of sachar va'onesh. We're not just dealing with the concept. Sachar va'onesh is a necessity. As Hashem did not just create the world for fun. Okay, let's create a world. Let's have a picnic. Let's have Chinese, Mongolians, South Africans. Let's have all these kinds of foods and colors and plants. No. There is sachar and onesh for actions committed by human beings. Obviously, we are important. Obviously, those actions and deeds are important. Otherwise, why are we being rewarded for them? Or punished for them? Don't create me and don't punish me, right? We don't have a choice. But obviously, the human being is important. He's so important that Hashem is going to reward him. And the punishment is not a punishment that Hashem is upset with him, I'm going to punish you. That's not, punishment, as we will see, is something completely different in Judaism. The concept, however, is a significant concept, sachar va'onesh, because it reminds us, ha'olam lo hefker, this is not a world that is just by itself without any purpose. Something happens as a result of what is going on, of people's actions. We are accountable. Next concept is Gilgul. I was thinking before I came to the shiur, how best to describe Gilgul, reincarnation, in a few words. You know what came to my mind? Frequent flyer. The people who travel a lot. When you come back several times, you have mileage. You've been here several times. Frequent flyer. Anyway, that's what Gilgul is. Gilgul is somebody who's been here more than once. We do come back. Life is not just, something that we visit once and that's it. Many times people visit more than once. Which, when we understand well, will strengthen our emunah in our understanding of Hasharat HaNefesh, how the soul continues to survive even after death, how death is not the end of the world, it's not the worst thing in the world, right? It helps us deal with many issues that we would have a hard time understanding. So Gilgul HaNefesh, the reincarnation of the soul, very important concept that was not known to Judaism until a little over 1,000 years ago, when the Zohar was introduced. It was more in the Kabbalah. People were not aware of it. A lot of people, rabbis, were shocked. They thought, oh, this is Hinduism. No, what do you think they take it from? This is something very, very powerful. It's all taken from Judaism. And other people believe in it too. An important idea as well that helps us understand that there's much more to life than what the eye sees. Next concept, Tafkid HaAdam. What is man's purpose in life? Briefly, if we were to answer it briefly, the question, what's man's tafkid? Lamlich et HaKadosh Baruch Hu alenu ve'al ha'olam. Is to make HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Almighty King over us and over this world. In other words, to connect to Him, to relate to Him, to live our life according to His guidelines and standards, because that's why He created the world to begin with. He wants certain rules to be followed, and if we do so, that's our tafkid. Now, the Jew's mission is different than the mission of the non-Jew, but we still both have a mission. We're both created in the image of God. We're both special. We're both important. We're both needed to do the job, but each one has a different job. But the common denominator of the job is to do His will. That's briefly an explanation of what Tafkid Adam is. Why am I saying this right now? What does this have to do with Mazal or anything? Because, again, this relates more to Hefkerut. Man does have a purpose. Man is created with a design, with tools needed to perform certain functions. He's not just thrown into this world. You're on your own. You'll be guided. You've been given certain talents, right? You'll be placed in the right place where you need to be. Don't worry about it. You don't have to figure out everything. Because, well, how did we start the lecture? We started about all the complexity and confusion that exists. How are we going to make sense of all of it? We don't have to make sense of all of it. Live your life according to the right path. Do the right things, and everything will fall into place. Remember, however, you have a mission. You have a job. You just can't sit back and think of retirement. You're not here for that. Okay, what are you going to do after retirement? I'm going to go play golf and go tour around the world. What are you going to do after that? Play golf again. Come on, is that what you came for? Yeah? So, we have a tafkid. Tachlit HaChaim is the next one. Tachlit HaChaim means, what's the purpose of life? We briefly described the purpose of the human being, but what about the purpose of the big life? What's the big picture? Right? That's a difficult one. That one you have to learn a little bit Kabbalah. But I'm only going to give you a brief description, right? A brief explanation. What's the purpose of life? Purpose of life, Ratzah Kadosh Baruch Hu letiv lanu. As the Kabbalah explains, Kadosh Baruch Hu wants to do good with us. Hashem has so much to give, so much to offer. Who's He going to give it to? He creates human beings. He's all about love. He's all about goodness. He's all about giving. But you have to have recipients. So creation is the vehicle to receive all that goodness that Hashem has to offer. We can't understand it beyond that.
What is the vehicle again?
Ha'olam hazeh, habriya, is the vehicle, ha'imtza'i, right, to receive all the goodness of Hashem. Hashem has so much to give. He wants us to enjoy. He's so good, loving. The nature of Hashem that we don't fully understand, partially, at least we're told, is to give. We see everything He gives us water, He gives us everything, right? Food, sustenance. So the essence of creation, the ultimate tachlit of why He created the world, is lehetiv, is to do good for us. Next concept, gufu neshama. Also a big topic, what's the difference between the body and the soul? Well, the soul we don't see, it's one of those things you don't see, but it exists. There are many ways to prove that the soul exists, that the essence of the human being is not his physical body. The physical body is just a suit. Some people have a suit 6'2". Some people have a suit 5'2". But it's all it is a suit, right? So it's like a size 40, size 42, 44. Right? So what? The essence of the human being is his neshama. That's the essence. The real human being is a neshama, right? The fruit. What's the fruit? Not the peel. The fruit is what you eat, what you enjoy. That's more the essence. And even that's not the essence, because the real essence is the gar'in, the seed. Because that's where life comes out from. Right? But for us, of course, we don't care about the seed, we care about the fruit. We enjoy the fruit. But the essence of it is really the seed. That's what makes it into a fruit. You take the seed and you put it in the ground, you get another tree again. That's the essence. So the essence of the human being is the neshama. That's the ikar. The guf is a vehicle through which he travels in this world. This is a physical world. You can't live with a soul. A soul is spiritual. How is he going to walk around and do things? Right? Repair, drive. You need a physical body. You need hands and feet. So Hashem gives us in the physical world a physical suit. That's the difference between guf and neshama. Neshama is, of course, something very, very special. Something that comes from above. Something that belongs to Hashem. Something that is spiritual. And ultimately, this is the neshama that we said before. When it does come in a reincarnation, it is the one that comes back. But wait a minute, there's something called ruach and nefesh too. Don't get too confused. Yes, it's true. There's nefesh, ruach, neshama, chaya, yechidah. There's 5 levels. There's all kinds of levels to this spiritual entity, or the spiritual essence of the human being. But in order not to confuse us anymore, let's just call everything neshama. Neshama being the spiritual part of the human being, his real essence. And this real essence is what really matters. Next concept is 7 in Yisurin. 7 in Yisurin is pain and suffering. What's pain and suffering? The best way to understand pain and suffering is a system, another system, an additional system that Hashem put into place. Sheme'azenet, as we call it in Hebrew. It creates a balance. It makes adjustments. It's an auditor. Pain and suffering, as long as it's not man-made, okay? Not man-made. If people hurt each other, I'm not talking about that kind of pain. Okay? I'm talking about the pain that happens because you slipped, because you cut yourself, you were making cutting vegetables or something, or going through all kinds of painful experiences in life. You were insulted by someone, pain, embarrassment, tsunami, right? Whether it's on a global scale or an individual scale, not man-made by us, even though if it happens to us from some other human being, that's also included. 7 in Yisurin is a system, is something that is also created, it's something that Hashem allowed for, and the best way to understand it is, again, a system that makes adjustments. Things are not right, things have to be adjusted, and that adjustment sometimes is painful. Why is it painful? That's another topic. Again, the topic has to do with atonement, with kapara, and which is a whole different topic. We don't have the time to go through that, but it's a system that is necessary for adjustments. Hashem made a world. It's perfect. It says from the beginning, it's al kitov. Hashem made a perfect world. Who ruins it? Man. He makes mistakes. He doesn't behave right? He's mischievous, right? He's selfish. He breaks the place up. He messes it up. Hashem has to sometimes bring a tsunami, right? An earthquake. But wait a minute, there's faults. There's a geological fault in the San Andreas. Yes, all of these things we know about. Of course there are faults. But Hashem uses those faults, right, to bring about the earthquake. When there's loss of life, of human beings that were created in the image of Hashem, you think it doesn't pain Him? Hashem would rather that not happen. People lose their life, no matter how bad they were. It's still His creations. We just went through it. Pesach, we talked about it. Shira, right? The angels wanted to sing when the Egyptians were drowning. Hashem says, well, you're going to sing? These guys, I created them too. This is not a time to sing. We're supposed to be happy that we are saved, but not to be rejoiced when the enemy falls. All creations of God. But there's a system in place, a very rigid system, that sometimes, whenever He decides, has to adjust itself. We don't understand, by the way, how it adjusts itself, but somehow it adjusts itself. there's various ways that adjustments are made. There's various dials that Hashem uses. One adjustment is called gilgul. Another adjustment is called pain. Another adjustment is a loss of money. All kinds of things that are adjustments to a system that is in place. For man's mission to be accomplished, for the world to be what it's supposed to be, adjustments are necessary. Now, we're not talking just about midat, adin, and rachamim, but this is really a toladah. This really follows din and rachamim. Din and rachamim that we stated earlier is also a system of rigid rules, din, justice, but has to have rachamim, because otherwise the world cannot continue to exist. So rachamim complements the din by allowing changes through mercy and compassion. But sachar and onesh, sevel and yisurin, the pain and suffering, is an additional system that makes for additional adjustments in place, which is related to din and rachamim. So this is an important concept that, even though we're uncomfortable with it, we see people going through all kinds of terrible, terrible tragedies, terrible problems. If we understand that there is a cheshbon, that there is a reason for it, if we understand that there's ashgacha pratit, that he's in charge and he's aware of this, if we understand that he loves us and cares about us, that there is din and rachamim, you see how all of this starts to make a difference? Then when we see sevel and yisurin, tremendous suffering, we say to ourselves, wait a minute, but this must have a reason. This just didn't happen because Hitler decided to make a Holocaust. He does not have permission to do anything that is against his wishes. But if he allowed for it, that means there must have been a reason why he allowed for it. Do we always know the reason? No, not necessarily, but we have an approximate idea of what it has to do with. The Torah tells us a little bit. In Pashat Bechukotai, Kitavo, Nitzavim, why holocausts occur, why there was a destruction of the temple, why people are kicked out of their homes, why there's no rain, why there are wars. The Torah gives us an idea, but exactly, we never know exactly pinpoint the problem. But we do know that there's Ashgacha Pratit. So we know he's involved. But how could he allow something so terrible? It must be he doesn't exist, Hashem Shalom. Some people say, where's God? Wait a minute. Did you read about him a little bit? Do you know a little bit of how he operates this world? Did you read the manual? If you read the manual, you'll see how he operates the world. And you'll know that this fuse is burnt. And this fuse has to be replaced. You have any idea of that? Oh, well, read the manual. Next concept is called zivug. Something that many of you perhaps are still looking for. What's a zivug? Only briefly. Big topic. Zivug means soulmate. What's a soulmate? The best definition of a soulmate is the best partner in this life to help you fulfill your mission. I think I like that definition. What do you say? You like it?
No.
You don't like that definition?
No, because I don't want, if the person is come to make me, so I have a lot of nisyonot with him.
Yeah, so.
And then I don't enjoy from the topic of romantic and Gan Eden and Adamot.
Okay.
I don't want to fight.
No. You may have the concept of Hollywood. That's why. Yeah, Hollywood's concept of soulmates is different. So the soulmate, according to the Torah, soulmate is the best shutaf, the best partner for a human being to complete or fulfill his mission in this lifetime. And sometimes that soulmate is not necessarily a very comfortable individual to live with. Sometimes it's difficult to live with. Why? Because he is a tikkun for a previous lifetime, for a previous reincarnation. In other words, when a person goes through life with a certain soulmate, a certain individual, and he has a certain kind of experience, it's the real soulmate. Okay, but he has a certain kind of an experience with them. There's all kinds of experiences with that partner. Some are comfortable, some are not comfortable, some are long, some are short. But nevertheless, it's still mishamayim. It wasn't chosen by us. There's a reason for that too. So soulmate is the best partner for what purpose? For that mission that we have. In order for us to do that mission properly, we need that help. We need an individual who best complements us. Or, even though he doesn't best complement us physically, but who best or who most easily enables us to fulfill our mission properly. There is an individual, therefore, out there who's the best match at a given time that can help us as a partner to bring about certain neshamot into this world, to achieve certain things as best as possible, and of course to elevate us to the maximal potential that we have. Without that individual, if you're single, you don't have that ability to accomplish all of that. It's impossible. An individual by himself is a half an individual. He's half a person. You cannot do all of that. So in order to accomplish this mission that we spoke about, the mission that is defined, a mission that is important to every human being, we need help. Hashem created this world where there's male and female. Again, a set of two for some reason, where you don't have to do everything. Can you imagine cooking, working, and doing laundry? Everything? It's so hard, difficult. Hashem says, I'll take care of it. You know, each one will have a role. You'll do the mitzvot. She will take care of other responsibilities. Together you will do things that are common to the two of you. No one by himself can do everything. And Hashem, for a reason, wanted it this way. Because we can't just focus on the physical world. We have to focus on our relationship with Him too. So we need that help. That help, of course, if it's the right person, helps us both emotionally, physically, and spiritually. Last concept is Olam Hazeh and Olam Haba. Olam Hazeh and Olam Haba is also a very interesting topic. What's the difference between this world and the world to come? This world is a physical world. It's a world that has an end because it has limits. This world will last 6,000 years. We're almost finished. Imagine me giving you this speech 500 years ago during the time of the Inquisition. We still have over 700 years to go. Now, there's only 229 years left. Mashiach has to come. Olam Hazeh is almost finished. The physical world as we know it, we'll have a period called Yemot HaMashiach, the time of the Messianic era. But it's almost finished. That's it. There's nothing left of Olam Hazeh except for 229 years. That's it, nothing more. After that, it's an Olam HaRuchani, a world that we do not really understand fully. No prophet has seen, even though we have some ideas, no prophet has even seen what that world looks like. It's spiritual. It's Olam HaNetzach. Because it's spiritual, it's called Netzach. It's endless. Just like that which is spiritual is endless, so is the next world endless, in a sense. That is where the Sechar, the ultimate reward is. It's an infinite reward. So this world is limited, and that world is not limited. This world is physical, that world is spiritual. This world is temporary. And that's a very important idea to continuously remember. Don't take things too seriously as far as pain and suffering. Don't worry too much. It's temporary anyway. Before you know, you leave it. You work yourself up so much. It's only a few decades. I'm sorry to sound so pessimistic and remind you that it's only a few decades you're going to stick around. You may have 1 decade left, 2 decades, 3, 4. That's it. It's not that much. Before you know it, boom, it's gone, it's finished. You know, of course it should be peaceful, it should be at home and not in the hospital. All of that is very nice, but it doesn't make a difference. In the end, we all go to the same place, right? The body's going to fall apart and decompose, and many of those bodies are going to be eaten by worms. I know it sounds a little bit disgusting, but that's the reality, because the body is just a body. It goes back to earth. The neshama goes back to Ruach Tashuv Elokim. Important concept to keep in mind, important to remember, important to understand. This is not the ikar. If this is temporary, this can't be the real thing. What's the real thing? The Olam Haba, that which is infinite, that which is spiritual. Just like the body is not the ikar, the neshama is the ikar. This world that is physical is not the ikar, the important. The Olam Haba is the ikar, so I have to work for that. I'm told to work for that. But I have to go through here to get to there. Okay? All right, just to finish up, just to summarize a little bit. In this earth, what do we see in this earth, in this creation, this physical earth? We see all the elements. We see fire, earth, water, and air. Right? Did I mention everything? Fire, air, water, and earth. All the elements that Hashem created the world with. Everything is present here. And because all the elements in the various percentages are present, this is what enables life. There's so much oxygen, right? There's so much nitrogen. there's so much xenon, right? All these gases, just the right balance. You go climbing the Himalaya, right? In the Himalaya mountains, Mount Everest, you're going to need oxygen because up there, higher up there, there's not enough oxygen. Down here, Baruch Hashem, there's a balance of what we need. You want to cook something on 10,000 feet above sea level? It's going to be different. You need a different recipe. It's not the same. Down here is where everything is a balance. Everything that we need for life is here. You look for life in other planets, they will never find. You may find demons, you may find angels, you may find all the kinds of life, but not human beings. At least not what we know. Right? This is the only place there is real life as we know it, and that is why all that's necessary for life exists over here. This existence, however, is not only due to the elements, it's not only due to the fact that the physical life enables it. It is only possible because Hashem enables it. At every single instant, Hashem makes this world continue to exist. If He let go His hashgacha, His divine providence, for one split second, everything would cease to exist. So don't think just because the world is in place, oh, it could run by itself forever. No, it's because He enables it to run. So Hashem's involvement in the end is what makes everything alive, what makes everything run. Even though everything in this world has the physical elements that enable it, there is one element that they've not discovered, unfortunately, scientists. God. He enables everything. In other words, you look with the most powerful microscope, you won't find God. I mean, you will see God because you'll see it, the structure, great structure, beautiful design. But He's there. He's invisible. But this koach is what runs everything. So that's the physical world. What about the human being within this physical world? Well, the human being is lucky. The human being not only has what he needs for the physical life, he also has the neshama, which is a chelek eloka mimal. It's a part of God. And because he has a neshama within him, he is able, he's able to know his master. Man is the only one, even though animals, by the way, do sing to Hashem, something called Perek Shira, where every animal does have a certain awareness of Hashem. The human being is in a much higher level than the animal, of course, because of the neshama that is with him. He's part of God. He's part of Hashem. The neshama, the spiritual part in him, enables him to not only relate to Him, but to understand Him a little bit, to communicate with Him, to interact with Hashem. That's something that animals don't do. So this tremendous ability that the human being has is something that unfortunately people ignore. People are not aware of. People don't realize the tremendous koach that they have as a result of that. That is why people have to come to terms with the following. The greatest obstacle to their advancement is this physical world. In other words, all this physical world is for our benefit. It's for our enjoyment. It's in order for us to advance, in order for us to fulfill our mission. But in many ways, the physical world is also our limitation. Give you a quick example. You have an individual who is not mentally sane, not very mentally healthy. He is limited. Let's call him that. There are various degrees of limitations in the mental functions, right? I'm trying to use a neutral, good word, right? People who have all kinds of limitations, physical limitations, that because of that, their mental capabilities are limited. Are they really limited? No. They all have exact or similar neshama that is totally not limited, that knows Hashem perfectly well, that has tremendous potential. The problem is that neshama is within a body, a cage, that it cannot really free itself. Imagine putting a big bird in a small cage. It doesn't have room to maneuver. Put a small bird in a big cage, she doesn't even know she's in a cage. Right? So when you take a big neshama, a beautiful neshama, and you put it into a body that is limited, we think at the outset, completely non-functional, complete. No! This human being, man or woman, or children, they have tremendous neshamot. And we have seen this in this generation with all kinds of autistic children who have demonstrated tremendous abilities tremendous ability, and it's only because they have a tremendous neshama. And even though they have this limitation that is mishamayim, nonetheless, we have to remember that these are very, very special people. Why they are like that in that limitation, that's a different topic. But the fact is that the neshama is still a great neshama. We don't see it. They know it a little bit, but we can't always communicate with that. There are ways, however, that people have found that you can communicate with those children in an indirect way and get them to express certain things that they know. And many of those things that are coming from the neshama directly are coming directly from Shamayim. So a lot of these children know things that we don't know. Because, as they say, people who are deaf, their vision is stronger, or some other sense is stronger. Here, because their physical body is limited, their neshama somehow is able to tap into the knowledge of Shamayim much more than us. So they are granted more information or more knowledge. They don't have to do battle with the Yetzer Hara as much, because their free will is in many ways limited. So therefore they know a lot more. This just comes to remind us that the neshama is something very, very great. And therefore, if we are able, through our sechel, which is the expression of our neshama, to overcome those physical limitations of emotions and feelings, anger and jealousy, if we're able to use the sechel, the neshama, to overcome those limitations, those physical limitations, we have no idea of how great we can be. In other words, the neshama has tremendous potential if it knows to control the physical body, to overcome many of those limitations and be truly free. Thank you.
Hazak Baruch.